Hey guys, this is Kat from the future again. So, I know earlier during the episode I had said that sometime this week would be Mariah Carey's birthday. It's actually today, the day we recorded. And as I tell people, Mariah Carey is my favorite Aries alive because my favorite Aries in general is Selena Quintanilla Perez. So, happy birthday, Mimi. I love you so much. You are the queen. You reign supreme. I've listened to your music since I came out of my mother. You are amazing in everything you do. Nothing but blessings, Mimi. Mariah Carey, I bow down to the queen. Happy birthday! Hi, guys. We are two geeky ladies talking about issues in our lives,
relationship gossip,
and occasional politics, all while geeking and having fun. Let's geek. Every single time it's always off. But we're gonna get it one episode.
Hey, I thought it was fine this time.
Oh, I mean, fine. Let's geek, but it's okay. But today is a really what? Sorry. Okay, so today is going to be a really cool, nice episode because we're going to talk about firearms. Bang, 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 bang. Bang. Bang, bang. Let me stop. And I'm really happy because we have a special guest. His name is Frank, and we work together. And he is Frank from Firearms, and he's an instructor. He's been around firearms, and he's been teaching how to use a proper firearm for years. So welcome to our podcast, Frank, because you are an avid listener who we absolutely appreciate.
Yay! Hi, Frank. Introduce yourself.
Okay, sorry. Hi, I'm Frank. As she was saying, I work with her, and she's always really nice, and she asked me to come on here and just kind of answer some questions regarding firearms and safety and, kind of the state of things. And I'm kind of somebody who doesn't lean one way or the other when it comes to politics. I like to go based on the facts and based on what works and what doesn't. And as far as that's concerned, you ladies go ahead and lead the charge and let me know when you want me to answer a question and go from there.
Yeah, of course. Oh, and then before we begin, thank you for coming on to the podcast and then talking about this, because I know, when it comes to firearms, people are very divided, and I think most of us are, I guess we don't know much about it, except for those who are like, don't take the guns away, stuff like that.
And some of them that are just like, burn them, get rid of them, they're dangerous.
Yeah, there's got to be somewhere in the middle that we can meet.
Exactly. So can you give us a small history about, the history of firearms in the United States? Because from what I found out yesterday, firearms dates back like 1000 CE. And apparently the Chinese invented the first prototype. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I was shocked too.
They're pretty old. I mean, they go back, like you said, thousands of years because of the invention of gunpowder. And, the minute that they found out that, you put a spark on this powder, it just goes boom. And then people had ideas. Then we had cannons. I would say cannons were probably the most mainstream firearms, on pirate ships and stuff, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah, especially in Hollywood. That's for sure.
And then they called them hand cannons because they were in your hand and they were like miniature sized cannons that shot a miniaturized ball out of them. So you had those two things going. But then to kind of speed forward a little bit, history of firearms, are you looking for more, when did they become more mainstream or who used them?
I can guide you through that. Yeah. Okay. When that was personally like my idea, because my thing is, I feel like a lot of people who are in this divide with the take my guns away or like don't take my guns away, like I just wanted to know if you could give us like a brief history on how it did become mainstream, how it became, because can I assume it was like only used for the military at some point and then eventually it was allowed that the citizens can use it, or what's going on with that? Because I don't know if a lot of people understand,
Right. So it was really meant like it was a tool. Like you go to the store and you buy a shovel, or you go to the
Hmm.
store and you buy this and that. You buying your tool for your household. Having a
Hmm.
firearm. There were no police officers back then. There, like if they were, their response time was incredibly slow. There were no telephones.
Hmm.
Um, so you bought a firearm because it was the same thing as getting wood, having wood in the house, going hunting, having meat in the freezer, that kind of stuff. You needed to have a firearm because you needed to protect yourself, mostly against animals more than people, right? So they
Right.
that the biggest thing is the reason that it was so important for people to own their own personal firearm was because the response time of a police or military force was so slow that, and which is not their fault. I mean, they don't have cell phones or Amber Alerts,
Right. Right.
so
Yeah.
you had that because you
They had
were
like
the
pigeons.
yeah, they had pigeons. Yeah, so that's kind of why it was more not really regulated because it was kind of seen as a requirement to have in the household. Whereas now it's kind of a gray area because it's like you're three numbers away from and 5 minutes typically response time from having anybody that needs to help you. So I would say that firearms has now evolved from a necessity of protection to more of a sportsman thing, where like you want to have it to. It's kind of like going bowling. I always compare shooting to. It's something you can go have fun if done safely, if done right. But and it's also meant to be a deterrent against aggressors, foreign and domestic,
Mm.
because you read statistics like 3.8 million new Americans bought firearms in 2020.
What?
On top of the Americans that already own a firearm, 3.8 million Americans bought one just in 2020 alone. So while that sounds scary, it's even scarier to a country like Russia or someone else that wants to invade because they're like every
Right.
other house could potentially have a firearm in it.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
a lot
so
of people.
so as far so that's like where we're at. So it was like most people who would have a firearm were people that were not in a residential area or older residential cities. They'd be on farms with lots of acreage and they are their judge and jury and they are their protector. Now we moved into today's society where mostly everywhere is a residential area. And
Yeah.
I mean, even for me, like I live on post here on base, and the MPs are literally I could probably throw a rock and hit one. So as far as that's concerned, I believe with firearms, it started out as a necessity for those who needed to protect themselves and their family, and now it's kind of moved into where it's a privilege to have one, and it's not more for protection, which it can be because statistics are saying that it's getting violent out there, but it's possible that it's
Yeah.
just because um
People are crazy.
yeah, people are just going crazy because they're cooped up, and
Mhm.
it's people are feeling like if they have a firearm on them, they feel safer because right now they feel like um because you can't read anybody. I mean, you look around and you see everybody, and you have no idea what they're gonna do
That's true. Yeah.
or
Absolutely.
who they are.
And then we already know with the climate that's happening right now, the tension.
Hmm. And everyone's so divided. You know,
Mm.
everyone's got their
No.
opinions.
That's yeah. I would say that's the problem with our country. It's we're too divided, and we saw that what I think mostly in 2020.
Hmm.
Yep. And in the last 5 years, actually, I would say the last 6 years when it comes to that topic of firearms, like it's always been a thing that we've been talking about, but I feel like it's really been aggressive with the topic for my opinion, the last 6, 7 years. Oy. But what I will ask next is when was your first time around a firearm? Was it, with the military, with you being a veteran? Was it, at a younger age, maybe were you surrounded by family? Or was it just something you woke up one day and said, you know what, I just want to learn. I just want to, get into them or just, use one just to, protect my family or so. What was your experience with it the first time you did it?
So I grew up in New York, and New York, California, and Maryland are one of the most strict um, firearms purchasing states. So I never had one in the house. My family didn't see the need to have one because, like I said, they believed like if they ever had an issue, baseball bats will work fine, and you can just call the police, that kind of thing.
True. Latino household, machete.
Italian household, we just have that wooden spoon.
There you go.
Um, so my first time handling a firearm was in boot camp in the Marine Corps. It was the first 3 days I was there. They took an M16, they put it in my hands.
3 days.
Mhm. They
God.
put it in my hands, and then I had to have that thing on me the whole rest of the time I was there. And it didn't have a magazine in it, and they made us keep like the breeches open and stuff to always see that it was empty, which access to ammunition on there was almost impossible. They do a pretty good job with making sure it's safe. But from that moment on, you're taught. I mean, this is just the Marine Corps. I know other branches are different. Every day you have to handle that weapon in like drilling motions and things like that. And you have to really know how to hold it. And they teach you that because they want you to have control over it and make sure you know where that muzzle is pointed at all times. And I didn't even shoot it until week 7 of being at boot camp. And week 6, you just spend an entire week aiming it, practicing fundamentals. You go to the range and you don't fire a single shot for 7 days, but you act as though you have rounds in there. And then after that, you do, and you're being watched heavily by the instructors and things like that. It's so controlled. That was my first experience with firearms, and then every year afterwards, every 6 months, you're required to keep shooting and keep concurrent and making sure you can hit a certain amount of target. And then I bought my first firearm. My first purchase was when I was 19. I purchased a shotgun. That's 12-gauge shotgun, and the reason I did so was because I had wanted to go hunting, and that's another topic. Is people always frown upon hunting, but if you've ever taken a hunting class or anything like that, they always stress that hunting is about not going out and killing something and wiping pig blood on your face. It's about environmental conservation. There are some seasons where you won't even be allowed to hunt certain things because they don't have enough population. So they literally won't. They'll say, "Hey, we're not doing deer this year because the population is too low. We have to give them a chance to repopulate," and things like that. Sometimes there's a shortage of food, so they're like, "Hey, we want you to hunt more because it's humane." So we're about environmental conservation. So there's certain things you can't shoot. There's certain things you can. And there's no such thing as like, "Oh, I didn't know what it was." Like, if you didn't know what it was, don't shoot it. Plain and simple. You get a huge ticket, a huge fine. Most of the time, you just lose your license altogether. They take all your stuff.
Mm.
That's Maryland, and I know that other states are different, but Maryland is about hunting is about environmental conservation. So I got a shotgun. I never ended up going out hunting, so then it was just sat in the closet. That was the first time I purchased a firearm, and that's my experience with firearms. But I did take it shooting. I went to the range and shot some clay discs and stuff. And everyone is a weapons instructor if they're good. Like if they're a responsible firearms owner, they'll know everything about safely handling them, and they'll have no problem coming up to a complete stranger and correcting them if they're doing something wrong or doing something unsafe.
I was thinking, because I was listening and everything, and I know you talk very calmly, but I was like, okay, in my opinion, if I were to hold any type of firearm, I would be nervous at some point during your training or whatever it is that you were going through with your experience with firearms. Were you ever nervous at some point? Like,
Absolutely. I mean, especially the first time too. When you hold a loaded firearm and you know that the difference between something terrible happening is
Mhm.
you tripping on something or like something of that nature, it definitely it definitely stresses you out. Um, but then eventually over time you start to trust the fundamentals and the knowledge you're given, and then you start to become confident, but you don't want to become overconfident. That's when people start doing stupid things and then stupid things happen.
True.
So how long have you been an instructor? Like, how did you become an instructor?
Um, when I was in the Marine Corps, they had a weapons instructor course, uh, and you basically learn the basics of certain firearms, and then you become something called a coach. I never actually went and coached. I just became certified in coaching, and then I handled multiple different types of firearms, and then so that's where I got certified. But then handling different types of firearms, at my job here and stuff like that, and then doing research and then owning certain firearms because now I'm purchasing them. I'm trying to pace myself with that, but I like to collect them and store them safely and follow the proper procedures. And as long as the state of Maryland and the federal government feels that I'm someone who deserves to own one and that it can be trusted with it, But as far as when I became the most proficient, I would say probably when I started working with you over there because I was seeing all different types of things that I had never seen before. My coworker that I work with, he's extremely knowledgeable and he owns a lot of firearms, and I learned a lot from him. And I would just say that you learn most of the time. You can sit in a class and learn PowerPoint and learn about stuff, but until you pick up a bunch of stuff and held stuff, that's when you become the most proficient.
That's true. It's like experience and practices. I know you mentioned earlier that, what was it, New York, Maryland, or what was the other state that has
California.
California. Okay. And so I guess my question is, what is the actual process of like getting one? Because, since there is some states that are easier, others are harder. So I was just wondering what it's like, because I personally never walked into a shop before. And I'll pass by one, but I'm just like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah. So it depends on where you live, but there's a federal standard. So every state is required to at least do a background check on you, and everyone who sells firearms has access to the FBI's background checking system, and they themselves have been background checked and consistently are background checked. It expires. And you're required to give a background check on everybody. They're required to have a valid, non-expired identification, like a driver's license or state ID. And every state's different, but for the most part, that's all that's required in every state for a shotgun or a rifle, like an AR-15 or a shotgun or something of that nature. It gets more strict when you get a handgun or something concealable. They don't want you to be able to pull something out that has 30 shots in it and be able to do all types of horrible things. They want you to
be a menace to society.
Correct. So what they want is if you're going to have something like a handgun that's concealable, very, very concealable, you can hide that anywhere on your body or have a backpack or something. They do a much more thorough background check. So if you're going to get a handgun at our store, for example, you're required to get a handgun qualification license, which is like an 8-hour class that teaches you the weapon safety and
8 hours?
Mm-hmm.
That's a short time.
But they also you have a test at the end, and it's a very difficult test. And if you fail, you fail. You have to take it again and things like that.
Oh, so they have like a process almost like a driver's license.
Yes, exactly. Like they're not going to let.
Know that.
So that's required for anybody that is not active duty military, police officer, federal agent, anybody who can handle a weapon because they've already been trained are not required to. But in Maryland, you're required to get a handgun qualification license if you're not military in order to purchase a handgun. You are not required to do that to purchase a shotgun or a rifle. So that is open to. I was going to let you guys talk about that and see what your opinion is regarding that.
Like
me personally, sorry, I'm shocked by that. I'm like, me personally, like, dude, no, that should be required for everything. It shouldn't be like, oh, only selective. You know what I mean? It's kind of stupid. It's like saying like if you wanted to get like a certain type of model car, right? But you can only get training for or like do your driver's license for this type of car. But like, because if you look at the classes, right, you got the motorcycle, we got the commercial cars, and then we got the truck ones. They all require a test, and also they all have individual like license for it, right? Because you got to have, just because you have a car license doesn't mean you can go ahead and ride a motorcycle. Now I know a lot of people do, but I'm just like, what? I don't know. Me personally, I think it should be for like all of it. It shouldn't be like that
I agree.
because that's I mean, if you think about it, we already have like issues with people like selling illegal firearms already, unregistered, firearms. And then on top of that, like you telling me I could walk in, get a shotgun, and then that's that. Because if
Yep.
you look at it, like that's how easy we can have like mass shootings, the school shootings what was it that the shooting that happened with those
Parkland.
yeah, but no, sorry, I was thinking about the Asian nail salon one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like it's an easy target for all of that. Like what? That's crazy.
Right. Yeah, that's. I mean, I'm of the same opinion. I have people come into the store all the time, and
Hmm.
they'll ask to see something. I tell them to put the ID on the counter, and they do, and then I show them the weapon, and they'll grab it with like their finger right around the trigger
See,
and
but that's
things
like
like that. And it annoys me to no end because I can't, because it's technically unloaded, and I've checked that and things like that. But you know, they always teach you treat every weapon as if it were loaded, and treat
yeah.
it with. And you see like people come in and first of all they're swinging it every which way. They've got their finger on the trigger, and I'm not allowed to yell at them and be like, "Hey," like, because you work for a store and they have like a customer service where like I have to make everybody feel
But I feel like you should be able to, like, management, whoever it is, needs to tell people, hey, don't do that. It's the same thing when, like, you take a freaking pen and the teacher says, don't point at it. Or if you have a scissor, always point it down, right? Because you're going to, like, hurt somebody, you
well,
know?
yeah. And the worst thing is once I do their background check and everything, and it all comes back clean, they're walking out with it. And then
These-
that person's most like so what I'll try to do in that situation personally is I'll try to hey, kind of try to stroke their ego a little bit. And I'll be like, hey, you definitely know what you're doing when it comes to firearms. Obviously, you don't, but I just wanted to show you just a little trick to doing this and that. And then I'll just kind of show them like this is how you break it down. Always keep the muzzle pointed away from people. Keep your finger off the trigger because it's very, very, it's very, very easy to pull it. It's like almost like a hair trigger. You can literally just a tap and it'll go off. So just keep it around the guard. They have a guard on a firearm,
yeah.
and so I try as much as I can, but like those bad habits of like grabbing a gun and then having your finger around the trigger immediately, that's
Hmm.
something that should be instilled at a young age, potentially, which I know there's a question going into that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's kind of crazy. I think that everybody should have, and you know what? Some of these people are veterans that are acting like that, weapons like that, because not all branches do shoot. I think the Air Force shoots once in boot camp, and if you were sick or something during that week, there's not a requirement for you to go back and shoot because it's not a requirement to graduate. So I mean, just because everyone's a veteran doesn't mean you can be thrown into the same pool. I mean,
Yeah.
as a Marine, I shot a lot, and there was a lot of um, things like that, and then even the Army does that. But I mean, in a branch like the Air Force, not so much. I mean, I know the Navy boot camp they have a pistol thing, I think, based on what somebody told me, but
Right.
it should be a little bit more regulated and a little bit more thought about instead of just kind of like broadly all one size fits all solution.
Have any of you like know Michael Moore? So there is this man who's a die-hard Democrat, and his name is Michael Moore, and he has done some documentaries that have been, considered a little bit controversial. Like one of the ones on 9/11, there was one that he had done on firearms, and it was basically about like how easy it was to get a firearm. And I don't remember the scene exactly, and I can try to see if I can find it for the podcast. Try where he had gone into a shop and they actually gave him a free gun just for going into the shop. I don't know if he went into a bank or something like that, but they legit gave him a free gun just for doing whatever he had to do in that store. And he was just in shock, like, really, I get this just for doing this one little task. And they're like, yeah, if you want the firearm, go for it. And it's just like, it's that easy because, for example, it seems it's easier for me to get a firearm than a driver's license. I go to get a driver's license. They need my address, they need my bank statement, they need my birth certificate, they need my like mailing, they need everything. If I don't have it, they'll keep making me go home and coming back to reject me, and which is why everybody hates the MVA. I'm trying to figure out why firearms can't get that same treatment. Whereas, as a driver's license, that's the only thing that has bothered me, over the years about firearms is just so how easy it is to get one. And I know for a fact I qualify for one. And, I have spoken to you, Frank, in the past that, I want to learn how to use the firearm, and I definitely maybe one day want to own one, but for now I don't. I just think it's very important for at least an American citizen to practice their Second Amendment right. But drifting into the next question, it is a bit sad, but how do you feel about instructing children on firearms? Do you believe they should be instructed? And the reason why we ask this is because you see children who have been exposed to a gun before the age of 6, especially in, sad as it is, high crime rate areas, or people, who are exposed to poverty and stuff. What is your opinion on that? Because from what I learned, they definitely have firearms for small children, 6 up to 12, 13.
To answer your question, you were saying, what do you think about, children having firearms and using firearms and things like that? So this is going to be a little controversial, but I think it's a good thing. And it's only because of what I've been taught. Kids are curious by nature. If you want to own a firearm, kids see it. You should always have it in a well-hid, locked up place, completely out of the way. But if you're one of those people that starts to become an avid collector and they have a lot, and like even though they're locked up, like your kid has seen you take it out and stuff. If your kid asks you to see it, 100% show it to them. Make sure it's completely unloaded and all that stuff. Every time that they ask you to see it, stop what you're doing, get up, and show it to them. If you're sitting on the couch watching TV and your kid says, "Hey, can I see your rifle?" Get up, go show them the rifle. Make sure that you instill in them that whenever they want it, they can always come and get you. And then you also because you want them to be able to not go looking for it on their own or grab it out and use it. And then also you want to teach them as early as possible. I would say probably between like 10 and 16, how to use it, how to shoot it, proper hearing protection, eye protection, things like that. Don't ever oh, my kid, see, this is where we have a problem. Oh, my kid, he knows how to use the guns and he would never do that. And I can leave it unlocked, or like he can have a spare key and he can take it out and show his friends whenever he wants. That's when you get into a bad place. You want to have control over that firearm as much as possible, but you also want your kid to feel like whenever they want to see it, because they're curious by nature, children. Whenever they want to see it, they can come to you, and they don't feel the need to get it on their own, because they know all I got to do is ask dad, and he'll pop right up, or mom, and he'll pop right up and go get it for me, and then I can look at it and play with it or whatever. But you monitoring them, and that's another thing too, is storage. So that bring me to the next thing. As far as storing a firearm, ammunition is always supposed to be separated from the firearm itself. Firearm is supposed to be locked up with either a cable lock or a trigger lock. Those are made out of stainless steel, really, really easy to, really, really hard to break them. And the biggest thing is keep it out of reach of your children. Keep it hidden. But if for some reason, you're somebody who goes out a lot and they see it, they're going to go looking for it. And kids are little mischievous little sneaks. They'll find it. And so the best thing you can do for safety, if you have children and you want to own a firearm, is to just make sure that they're educated. Take them to the range when I always see all the time. I always see like little girls at the range with their dads and their moms, and they're teaching them how to shoot, and they're being super strict. And if they do something even, they're literally have their hands right over the kid. Like they're basically hugging them, and they're not letting them control that firearm by themselves, but they're letting them get it out of their system, and they're teaching them good habits, and they're teaching them safety, and the earlier the better, really. As far as buying one for your kid or letting your kid have access to it whenever they want just because you think that they're squared away, I don't agree with that. But I agree with teaching them as early as possible. You know, you teach your kid, don't cross the road without looking both ways. Um, don't do this, don't do that. Wash your hands. Same thing with a firearm. You know, just the sooner the better. That's just what I've been taught in my hunting courses and stuff with kids. You know, I when I was in the hunting course, I saw these little kids. The instructor was kind of picking on them a little bit, and like, you know, so what's this? And he would like and stuff like that. But he was doing that because he wants them to learn, and he's putting them on the spot so they pay attention and things like that.
This might sound controversial, like also because, eventually my parents are going to get bored one day and be like, oh, let me listen to the podcast. Because I'll be honest, they don't listen to it a lot. I truly feel that at the age of possibly 12 or 13, I would take my child. I would hope that my baby dad, actually my husband, would be okay with
Baby
it.
daddy.
I know. I said my baby daddy. Like,
Ooh, wait, do we got a sign up sheet? Did somebody give me the sign up sheet?
right. Husband would allow the children to do that because, like I've told you, a few times in the past, Frank, I really do think it's very important to start practicing my Second Amendment right. The last 5 years has actually made me more conservative. I'm an independent, just talking on my political affiliation. So I really do feel as an American citizen that it is very important. And I do want my children around that age to learn. So I'm glad to hear you say this, even as controversial as some people think. But how do you feel? Because I feel like you're going to say what I feel is obvious, irresponsible parenting. Sad as it is, children that have been exposed to it at a young age, it's just, especially in those areas, like, what's your thoughts and opinion on that? Like, if you don't have one, it's totally understandable. If it's a short one, it's totally understandable.
So what you mean is, if you know kids who have gotten into an accident by getting into their parents' gun at a really young age, and are
Yeah,
you talking about irresponsible parents that will like leave the gun right on the kitchen table?
yeah.
Yeah. No, those people usually do go to jail and get in trouble, but that's the aftermath. We still have the tragedy. So the solution is to make sure. I mean, this is probably going to tie into a question later, but I have a good plan as far as how you can sell firearms effectively. I think that a lot of people would agree with it, that it's fair, but and we'll get into that later. But uh, you kind of people are kind of habits of people are have these habits that they do, and you kind of know that someone's kind of irresponsible. Um, and if somebody's leaving a revolver on the table and a 6-year-old picks it up and it's loaded on the table, that person has no business buying a firearm. And that person probably demonstrated that at the firearms counter, but wasn't allowed. What we weren't allowed to discriminate, you know. But it's things like coming up to the counter, being extremely hostile, saying things like, "Oh, I'm buying this for my buddy," and then take it back and be like, "I'm not buying it for my buddy. I'll let him use it, but I'm going to be the owner."
Ooh.
You know, I should have the power to be like, "I'm not selling you a gun. You make me uncomfortable." I don't. I have to just follow procedures because I'm. I don't know if this is going to be controversial or not, but someone will pull the race card, somebody will pull the woman
Mm.
card or something, and they'll say, "Oh, you don't want me to have this because I'm this or that," and my hands are tied. And the only person who should have the right to discriminate is a firearm salesman because you are the last point of contact. My fingerprints are on that weapon that a kid just killed himself with. You know, I don't.
That's sad.
Yeah, so it's something that I um, don't agree with, and I think that it's kind of easily fixable, but it's also not at the same time because, like you were saying, as somebody who has more conservative or individualistic views on the past 5 years, you know that you're somebody who's walking on eggshells.
Mhm.
You really, really can't voice their opinions. And
And
go ahead.
and I'm just wondering, my background is a little bit different. Because My parents were Salvadorian. And, back in the 80s, we come from the Salvadorian War, right? And so there, many kids were exposed to guns because they were supposed to fight, you know. And the thing is, my family suffered a tragedy, which my mom, um, I feel bad for her because I don't know how comfortable she is me telling this. Hopefully she won't, but this is a very important topic to at least mention because maybe there's somebody else who has been traumatized. So many family members have been taken away by firearms, right? And so my thing is, my mom unfortunately had witnessed her dad being murdered. And from that, she has always feared it. And so she instilled that fear onto me. So as you are speaking, my hands are a little bit sweaty because this is so uncomfortable for me. So for what would you say for the people who have this fear of firearms? Because most people who fear are the ones who are normally saying, like, take away the guns. You know what I mean? Because of whatever their background relationship is with firearms, or maybe just the unknown, or maybe it's just they don't know much about it. But what would you say to, I guess, in some extent, comfort someone who is just afraid of firearms? Or because it's one of those things, it's just like, the parents talking about like sex and drugs, like, oh, no, 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 we can't talk about that in the house.
Right.
No, 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 it's bad. So I guess, what would you say to those people?
Well, I'll start off by, sorry that had to happen to your mother. That sucks. Definitely terrible. And I would say that what I'd say to comfort someone in that situation is firearms are scary and you should be afraid of them, but a healthy fear. You're a car can be devastating. You can get into a really bad accident and never want to set foot in a car ever again. They can be a wonderful thing. You can hop in them and you can go on road trips and have beautiful memories.
Oh, trust me, I've had
Yeah,
a really bad car accident before.
yeah. I think so with when it comes to that, what I'd say to comfort somebody is, you know, with anything, time usually helps, just to stay away from it for a little while. But when it comes time to get back on the horse or whatever, or you're going to get back into the topic of firearms, there is a right way, there is a better way, there is a safe way. Don't blame the firearm, blame the person, or blame the don't blame, because I feel like that's something that's going on in society today, where we take such huge leaps and we take such huge steps. When something happens or a tragedy happens, we all feel like this has to change, that has to change, instead of just saying that was somebody who was just making a bad decision at that time, and that person might need help, or that person might have been so low in their life that they did something so crazy. But the tool itself, there's always going to be a way for someone to cause tragedy or someone to do something terrible. um, Especially with firearms, like, it's just easier with firearms. You can go and buy throwing knives or throwing axes, and you could do some horrible stuff with that. You get proficient enough with it. You could take your car, and we saw this happen recently, where a semi truck drunk driver mowed down an entire motorcycle column.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
and that truck that's meant to deliver goods and services and provide food and this and that just turned into a bulldozer that just killed a bunch of people. So I would say it's it's all about perspective. I mean, and if you have something happen, that's going to be a trigger for you, and that's not going to change until you associate with that problem with the person instead of the instrument. Like for me, I'll get into my personal experience with a bad experience with firearms. I went. It's funny you say you have a PS5. I went to buy a PS5 in DC when I got there, and it was at a police station in the parking lot.
Wow.
I went to go buy it. I had these two gentlemen approach me with a GameStop bag with a PlayStation 5 thing in it. They pulled a gun out on me. in DC.
Wait, I'm confused. So you were walking with it and they came and pulled it out, or two
No,
people?
I was walking towards them. They were walking towards me. I went to go buy a PlayStation 5 from
Okay.
them. I had been talking to them on a seller website. They seemed completely fine. They had 5-star reviews, this and that. I was at a police station. I was following everything by the book. This guy pulled a revolver out of the bag and put it up to my head and told me to cash app him $600 right now.
Oh my God.
That was my experience with firearms. I still buy firearms. I still like them. I work for it because I associated that crime with that person. That person was at such a low point because of COVID and had been struggling so much that all his sense of reasoning and empathy and everything out the window. So I almost died that night because of a game console, but I didn't blame the firearm. And I made an appointment. After making a report to the detectives and things like that in DC, they were like, "Man, you're lucky because a lot of people in your situation, they don't walk away from that."
It's like people getting killed over Jordans.
Yeah, no, they said people will kill you for much less.
Or like that last week's episode where we talked about, or whatever the last episode was.
The mother of young thugs.
Yeah, she died over a bowling ball. Like,
there's an update to that, but I want to let that story to keep developing. Maybe our next episode we can talk about that one.
Sure, no problem. But it's I agree with you. It's just like, boy. But it makes me think sometimes, though. It makes me think, like, there was something that I had mentioned to Kat, like, as when we were preparing for this episode, I had mentioned, Kat, do you remember me saying sometimes I wish, like, because I got frustrated with LA drivers, where I was just like, I really wish they could do this like 5-year thing where they go and retest us for like the driving license thing. And I was thinking, couldn't that be applied for guns? And I know a lot of gun owners would be like, no, like I don't want to be retested, like, but every 5 years, you just never know, because with everybody having mental health, we just came out of a pandemic, and you know what I mean, like all this other stuff. Would it be a crazy idea to like come back in kind of like a renewal of a license, make sure you're squared away?
Yeah, so one of your question was, why is it so easy to get a firearm? And I put on that point that I would say that it's not as easy to get a firearm as it is to keep a firearm. I think that's the problem, because I can be completely healthy and completely fine and start to get dementia or something, and then now I'm not. You're not allowed to purchase a firearm in the state of Maryland if you have a medical marijuana license. You're not allowed to purchase a firearm if you come to the counter blistering drunk, because your judgment is impaired. Now, you are disclosing that you have a need for medical marijuana and doing everything by the book, and the government still says no. Why do we not have to have mental health checks to keep our firearms? I think that we should. I think that if you've got, you should, and then it will even further let people know how much you deserve to have one. You've been inspected. The problem is anything government done tends to be debatable. So am I going to get mental health checked by someone who's biased, that might see me being a conservative or something like that, which I'm not? I'm just, every side's got good points. But if I'm a conservative, that makes me unfit to have a firearm because my therapist is biased, and who would regulate that? So it's hard to do something like that, because who is going to be the professional that's going to determine who can have a firearm, and would that person be able to handle the stress of that? Because them signing off on that document is essentially them pulling the trigger if something bad happens. It would be just as much stress as being an air traffic controller, maybe probably a lot less, but it's still in that realm where you've okayed this person and now they just went and did something. That being said, it's possible, it's doable. It should be a questionnaire that's developed, and as long as you fit the boxes properly, it shouldn't have anything to do with how you feel. But that's just not where we're at in society. You know, you're discriminated from taking a job when you put in an application for something before a human being even looks at your resume. They look and they have this automatic program that looks for keywords, and then by the time if you fit the boxes, then somebody looks at you, and the minute that you ask for a livable wage and decent working hours so you can be home with your family, they're not hiring you. So I'm saying, like, it's hard because we have so many other things that don't work, and then we're going to implement a program that checks mental health for people to own firearms, and it's going to be like that's person's opinion. So I think it should really fall on to, do you have anything that pops up? So did you get locked up in a mental health facility? That should flag something. That should flag something. That should tell the cops that you have firearms. I know that sometimes that does happen, because if you answer, do you have firearms, and you're in a mental health facility, the cops will typically come to your house and get them. But that's if you disclose that. But anybody who's smart will just be like, no, I don't have them. They take your word for it. So I would say the best fix for that issue would just be, if something happens that would make them question your mental health or mental fitness to own a firearm, it should be all over the place that you own one, or and flag something, but it doesn't. And with computers, it's totally possible. You know, if you fail to pay a credit card from 20 years ago, you're going to know about it. You know, like,
that's true.
We're talking about firearms right now. We'll probably all go on TikTok or Facebook later, and they'll be like gun ads, 20% off or something like that. Like, they're listening. They hear, like, there's data. So
that's already been proven. Like,
yeah.
Me and Kat, we'll be talking about something like, I don't know, like we could be talking about Beyonce or something, for example, right? Because we're going to talk about her later in the episode, and like a pop-up of like a new album coming out or whatever, and it's just like, oh, that's creepy, It's just the government listening. I'll be like thinking, I'll be talking about an anime, like, for example, Attack on Titans, which I have it in the corner over here. It'll pop up and I'm like, oh my god, stop it, that's creepy. Put myself on the phone.
Well, I'm African. I've spoken about this because it's random for me to be like, I'm African.
Everybody you can.
I joke that, when you're African, you have relatives all over the place when we immigrate to different countries. So I have cousins in different countries like Denmark, Germany, Switzerland. I found one in Australia recently, but that's a story for another day. Well, he was born in the UK, but he just moved to Australia. But I was speaking to one of my cousins who's from Switzerland, but he's currently living in Germany. He said that, every time I do occasionally travel to America, it frightens me. And I was like, why? He said, because of this whole thing with guns. He said, you guys are the #1 carriers of guns in this country. Like, it's not like this in Switzerland at all. And I was just like, so you can't own a gun? And he was like, yes, you can definitely own a firearm, but you have to go through all of these classes to get one. And you're not even allowed to keep it in your home. Not everybody owns a firearms. And apparently he said, like, there's this like special office or so where you have to legally keep your firearm in there. And then you just go into that building and say, hey, I want my firearm. And then they're just like, what do you need it for? And you tell them, then you take it out and then you return it back. And I sat there and I'm just like, really, for real? And he said, yeah, that's how we do it here. He said, he said, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but a lot of people don't go to jail for firearms. And I'm just like, that's crazy. And he goes, exactly, because you live in America. So I get nervous every time I come to this country because everywhere you go, you guys are just, and then he jokes, violent. And I'm just like, well, it's America. So I'm just sitting here like, I totally get exactly what you're saying. Like, the topic is taboo in some countries. So to hear you say that, that's crazy. And I hope I'm not TMI, because if I am, but we can cut this out. Did they find the person that did that?
They did not. The two
Oh,
guys got
goodness.
away with it.
Oh.
And there was a Venmo. There was a Cash App that I thought would be 100% traceable because money being transferred, there's a transfer number. They can call Cash App. They can find out what bank account it went into, who that person's bank account is associated with, things like that. I thought there was no way that they're going to get away with this. They got away with it. I got a call from a detective a little while, like maybe 6 months later, and he was like, "We're still working on it," and this and that. I'm like,
Oh
I don't
Lord.
even care at this point.
Okay.
Like, so it's for me, I think that I don't know if the firearm they had was illegal or not. I'll tell you what though, where do the illegal firearms come from? The ones with the scratched off serial numbers. They come from people who buy them legally and scratch off the serial numbers. And they sell them to people for 3 times what they paid because they had the clean record to buy the gun in the first place.
Ugh.
But you can limit that by being stricter. And just because you're a veteran doesn't mean you're a good person.
That is
Absolutely.
true.
Thank you for your service. And of course, you know that from working where we work. There are plenty of rude, indecent, disrespectful individuals that come into our store every single day.
Speak
And
on it.
and while being a veteran might give you an edge in because we are taught manners, whether you practice those manners is up to you. But there should be a lot stricter of a check than, oh, you're a veteran. What a solid golden star you are. You go ahead and you're good to buy a gun here. Like, you should still have to take a class. You should still have to do this, that, and the other because you've done nothing to prove that you deserve to have that firearm since you've been out, you know. And who knows how long you've been out for? You know, you could have been out for years. And you guys know if you don't do something every day with certain tasks, you just forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't handle a firearm every day, you're not going to know how to do it.
So
Right.
earlier you had mentioned that you were going to get into later. You had like a solution or something?
Oh, yeah. So, as far as for purchasing a firearm, I think the background check thing we have right now is great. That's definitely good. As far as how it should be a little bit more thorough, and whether that makes it take longer, that shouldn't be anything that you should care about.
Right.
Oh, I wanted to buy this gun so I could go take it out for the weekend. So the same 7 day to 10 day waits that we have on handguns, sometimes somebody will get a 7 day wait and they're checking your state record. The police are checking if you're clean in the state of Maryland, for example. Your federal record, we don't federally check you because the state's checking you. You could have crime in Texas, but that didn't flag because we only checked you in Maryland. You should have a federal and a state background check whenever you do anything, whenever you purchase.
Makes sense.
But right now, you have one or the other. So I've had onesies and twosies slip through the cracks. They usually find them later, but that's just because they're being dumb, but not always. And that maybe that person just went and sold it or something, scratched it off. And they usually are regulars. Another thing too is it should be at the discretion of the person selling the firearms, whether they sell them or not to somebody. And this should be the only thing in the world where it's okay to discriminate. And not discriminate for age, sexual orientation, race, anything like that. But you should be able to go with your gut feeling. And if you feel like somebody is displaying body language that's suspicious or is being suspicious or changing their answers, like I had one guy say, "Oh, I'm active duty." Oh, but like not, but yeah, I'm reserve. Oh, but yeah. I am also an army contractor. Like, you're weird. You're weirding me out. You know, if you don't come up to the counter and display, like, I feel like it should be kind of like a job interview. Like, you're interviewing to show me that you deserve to have this, that you will
I
be safe.
agree. Yeah, no, I
And
agree.
I should have to be able to ask you questions like, how are you going to store this when you get home? What's your plans? I can't ask those questions. I just buy the book, everything.
It's so weird that they don't do that. Like that literally bugs me. Like, what? This
I would say it works for about 90% of people, the stuff that we have in place right now, a lot of people are very responsible, especially hunters. Hunters get such a bad rap because of like the Southern Confederate
Oh,
morons in the overalls. But I promise you, hunters are the nicest, most intelligent, safety practicing. Like they'll annoy you with their safety, like people that you'll ever meet. And they love to teach their kids early. Um, there's no harsher punishment than when like a hunter's kid tries to touch their gun. They're gonna be like, "Hey, you're losing everything." Like it's um it's really nice. And I think those classes should be, instead of being taught optionally, should be taught in a high school or middle school. You know, we have all these
you're
classes we don't need
yeah,
to
no,
take.
I agree.
Like,
Yeah.
hey guys, we're gonna learn about firearm safety today. Like, and then like I don't know, in your home ec class or something or whatever,
I mean,
or
they do it for like sex ed. Why not do it for guns?
that's what I'm saying. So like,
Yeah.
start early, teach people early, and have all different types of firearms with different calibers so people can see what the differences are and teach them. And then it's a class that they need to pass. They need to get in, they need to get a 65 and above on to graduate high school, because these are things they're going to come into contact with in their life. But I feel like it's all about grooming kids to go to college now instead of teaching them how to survive in the world, which I feel like high school used to try and do. They don't push trades on kids, which we need people to do trade jobs. They don't push anything of use. So one of those things they could push would be a firearms safety course, and it's an entire term long, like 3 4 months, and then you switch over to an art class or something afterwards. Like, so I would say my solution would be, teach them early. Um, the background checks need to get stricter. There needs to be a flagging system in place when somebody who owns a firearm does something. And they usually do that. Like if you commit a really heinous violent crime, the first thing they'll check is if you have a handgun. But if you go to a mental health hospital and having because you're having a mental breakdown, that's not something that they will flag. So that needs to fix. Only if you tell them. Only if you disclose it.
That's crazy. Only if you disclose it. That's
Yeah.
wow.
And then I would say that it definitely needs to. They need to let people go with their gut feeling sometimes. I mean, and if and I guess you could probably have a second or third party there to kind of make sure that it's not just somebody being like whatever about it. But if I am getting this vibe from someone based on very clear indicators, and I could write those down and be like, the reason I declined their application was because their body language was weird. They were scratching their neck. They were looking away. They were trying to have me help them answer questions. This happens. Everything I'm telling you, almost daily. They got this question wrong that is supposed to automatically disqualify them from purchasing a firearm. But I'm allowed to ask them, are you sure that's what you want to put? Of course, when I say that, the human instinct is going to be like, he's probably saying that because I put the wrong answer. I should put the other answer. That way I can buy a gun. I should be able to take your application and throw it in the garbage. You're not buying from us. Go somewhere else. You answered that question. Are you the actual purchaser of the firearm? No. Oh, I didn't really read. Then why are you buying a gun? You didn't really
True.
read.
That
True.
makes me think that there needs to be mm, more freedom for people who are selling the firearms to like have a
But that's
little
a
bit more
societal issue.
power. Yeah, because I'm just like, if somebody like at a regular restaurant, retail store, like they have the right to like kick you out because you're being like disrespectful, rude, whatever it is. Like I feel like it should be the same for firearms people. Why do they have that much freedom and you can't even say anything? That's wild to me.
Because of money.
Really.
It's all money.
Mm,
All your boss sees is a lost sale.
good lord.
That's it. It's all money. And it's crazy. It's like I don't know what happened, but it feels like in this country, people used to be greedy, but it used to benefit. Like even though somebody was definitely being greedy, they also still had some kind of morals and ethics that they didn't want society to turn into something that their kids couldn't live in and function in and pay bills in. They cared a little bit, like where I feel like there was a line in the sand, and I feel like that's kind of gone out the wayside, and now it's all about money. The entire world runs on money, and this is why there's a gun safety problem. There's a gun purchasing problem because money is dictating decisions that should be made based on morals and ethics. And there's no fix for that except for a change in culture.
So, Frank, thank you so much for coming on our show and taking some time out of your day, which we really appreciate because I keep saying it throughout this episode. This is very educational. You've taught me a lot of new things. I'm so glad you came on this show because you could have said, nah, I'm busy. I got other stuff to do. So thank you for, educating us. And thank you also for being, one of our early listeners and subscribers.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome, no problem.
You're a real one for real. You're a real one.
Yeah.
So Yaz, why you quiet?
Jesus. Oh my God. Okay, I will say this though. Thank you, because what you said, about during the whole thing with my mom, that's always been an issue with me because I remember, I don't know if it was high school or something, because it was very unfortunate. Somebody in my high school. Hello. Sorry.
No, your look was funny. It was like.
Okay. God, all emotional too. Okay. Well, what I was saying is back in high school, unfortunately, this would be really quick. Back in high school, we came up, I think all of us can agree because we're almost around the same age. Suicide in high school was at its height, just like, teen pregnancy. And the thing is, there was a student who unfortunately killed himself with a gun, and it was very we like, oh my God, that like it was a whole thing because one, we were like very sad, and I didn't knew him personally because he was in those like very smart classes, which I didn't even know what that looked like in high school.
Yeah, that's me too.
But oh, okay, we relate. But
damn, I feel terrible not to distract. I was an AP student senior year.
Maybe you know what, that's probably why me and him are like this. Look at us, we're already in like light colors. Yep. We're gamers over here too. But on a serious note, when that happened too, yeah, I got mines everywhere. When that happened, I remember I wanted to ask my mom it was a question, something about firearm. And then I was just like, Mom, somebody killed himself with guns. And it was a whole thing. And she even wanted to talk about it. I don't even know if she remembers the conversation, but I always remembered like guns were taboo in the house. Now it makes sense, but I was just like, I'm just glad that what you said, especially since you've been professionally using or like, I don't
selling, instructing.
Yeah. But
safely own it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't know what to title you. But hopefully somebody can take from what you say and then take it with a grain of salt, whatever it is, and have some comfortability. Because that is always the main issue. Anybody who's listening to this, they probably lost a loved one from guns.
Most likely, 78% of all homicides in Maryland are caused by a firearm. 78% of homicides.
Now that I'm in California, I don't know. LA, yeah. That's a whole different thing. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you for your words and stuff like that. So
not a problem. I appreciate you guys having me on. I was trying to not be as biased as I could. It's just because there's no easy answer for any of these issues, but we can't ignore that they are issues. And I think as society evolves, as technology evolves, as we as people evolve, it will get better. Maybe there's more statistics posted because they're recording more than they used to, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Maybe now that there's actually people looking in that direction, it looks like it's worse than it is, but it's always been this way. And they just turned a blind eye to it, if that makes sense. We'll just have to wait and see. I mean, I do my part, she does her part, and you guys can do your part just by, if you do end up purchasing a firearm, just keep it locked up the right way, and just constantly practice with it and ask questions. Everyone's always afraid like they're gonna get made fun of because they don't know anything about a gun, and a lot of guys will come in and be like, "Yeah, this isn't my first handgun," but you know it is, and you can tell based on the way they're handling it. And just be humble because it's a humbling thing.
True.
That's pretty much it. Thank you guys.
All right, no, thank you. All right, bye. Talk to you
Bye.
later. I still can't believe the Coca-Cola. Please don't sue me because I don't have the rights to
That's
show
free advertising for them, as far as I'm concerned.
True. Oh man. Okay. We just came back from the interview. God, that was like very educational. Like
It was.
I agree. Although when we were talking about it, like I was hand sweaty, but what did Eminem said? Palm sweaty, mom spaghetti. I had that moment where I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna vomit my mom's spaghetti over here because I don't know. Like I said, it was very, guns is very taboo in my household. So I was nervous to talk about it.
Yes, it.
I'm sorry, this thing is pissing me off. I need it so like when I'm talking, the pop doesn't go like pop, like I just want pop, it's my pop filter, it's falling. Oh no, help, I can't get up, it's falling. Watch somebody who's like into firearms or someone who's like sassy, like you shouldn't joke around like that. Okay. All I'm gonna say to you.
That was a meme right there. Literally. When somebody tells you something, knowing damn well you're still gonna do it. Okay. So that was really fun and really educational. He's a great guy. He really is. And he supports the podcast, which, I really appreciate, and I know you appreciate too. So, All right. So are we ready for our wild story?
Yes, give it to me.
So this is Damn Bruh, That's Wild, where I tell a credible true story from around the world that actually happened. And again, I thank this website because I've gotten a lot of stories from this website, mirror.co.uk. And this is titled, My Girlfriend is Mad Because She Thinks I Tricked Her Into Naming Our First Kid After My Dead Cat. So yeah.
We gotta do something about these crazy cat people, man.
Oh, so you want to do something about me? Even though I love cats and dogs equally, I just so happen to have a cat because it fits my lifestyle.
I'm tired of you being so lonely.
I love her though. I wish I could turn the camera on her, but or maybe
actually, you know what? Why don't you just? You know what? Really quickly, why don't you just show our audience what your kitty cat looks like?
No, because I just grabbed her while she was chilling. So it's like, what are you doing? So, hey, I know, I'm sorry. This is my beautiful baby. This is Karma. I love her to death. And she's like, what the F are you doing? I was chilling. But yeah, as you can see, yeah, she's gone. But sorry, Karma.
Okay,
but
so
anyway,
the story.
Yeah, so this is a guy on Reddit, and he did the whole Am I the Asshole series.
Ooh,
so,
I love these.
Before he got with his girlfriend years ago, he had a cat named Clementine. Kind of like the song, oh my darling, oh my darling. Yeah. So he and his girlfriend are pregnant. So before that, they were going through baby names and stuff like that. And he had suggested, why don't we name our little girl Clementine? And of course, his girlfriend was like, why? And he was like, yeah. And he was just like, I think it's a cute name. And, I just think that it's a good name to name her. We should celebrate that name. It's just a name that I just personally love. So let's name her Clementine. And his girlfriend was like, okay, we can do that. So they had their baby and they named her Clementine. And as they were, introducing the baby to the grandmother on, the guy's, mom and stuff, the mom went into the closet and dug out some photos and was just like, oh, you named baby Clementine. Kind of reminds me, of your old cat. So the girlfriend's like, excuse me? So the mother brings out photos of him, like when he was with the cat and other childhood photos and stuff. And she was like, you had me name our baby after your dead cat that you lost years ago before you met me? And he's just like, what's the issue? And she's just like, are you serious right now? So you tricked me into naming my first kid after your dead cat. And he's like, I wouldn't say I tricked you. I just genuinely like the name. And what's the problem? The baby's cute. My old cat's cute too. I mean, is it really an issue? I don't think I tricked you. And his girlfriend is incredibly upset. Rightfully so, in my opinion. So, of course, he went on and was just like, am I really the asshole for this? Because she's very upset with me. And people were one person was like, no, I kind of think you tried it because you didn't tell her the origin of the name. You kind of lied about the origin. You should have been honest about it.
What was the origin?
His dead cat's name was Clementine.
No. Okay, according to the person's comment, you lied about the origin. What did he lie about?
He never told the girlfriend that it was after his dead cat. He just said,
a lie. It's not a lie if you didn't say anything. It's not.
Yes.
A lie. Because remember, let's look at the definition of a lie. It's when you say something untruthful, but if you never brought up the fact that Clementine name was from a cat, how are you lying? You just never brought it up. That's not lying. No, it's not.
That's like somebody naming your kid after their ex. Come on.
That's not the same. That is not the same. But he could have.
He should, that's what one person said, and I agree with them. And another person said that, Clementine is a nice name, but how did you think she was gonna react when she found that out? Most people were kind of agreeing with my opinion too. Well, I'm agreeing with their opinion. The vote was, you're a complete a-hole for that. And I agree, you're a complete a-hole.
But that's so stupid. It's not like you did name it after an ex. Like, if it was an ex, this would be a different conversation.
At the end of the day, Yasmin, you named my first baby after your cat.
First off, what do you mean you named? You agreed.
Because she didn't know.
Whatever happened to making a list? Whatever happened to making a list?
Like I said, that would have upset me very much. That would have upset me very, very much.
It's weird, but the fact is, Clementine is such a cute name. I would forgive it.
Regardless of if it's a cute name or not, you kept that quiet that's your old cat's name. And it took your mother to pull out photos and show me. You know what? Yazin, we're not gonna do this. But I know how sneaky you are. You're gonna play me. All of this say he's a total a-hole for that. I agree. And apparently the column agrees too.
That you're just gonna put the blame on the person when your dumbass agreed with it. You agreed with the name. You thought it was cute. Just literally take a name and change it. You know how many people do that, especially in America?
I would hope she would change it, because if that were me, I would have been like, no, we changing this baby's name. Sneaky A.
Really? Do you have a process of changing a child's name? You gotta go through.
He was dead wrong, in my opinion, for that. He was dead wrong.
I don't think so. I think he was all right. It's just a name. I would find it kind of weird, but the animal. You know what's really weird? If that animal was still alive and you named it after the dog.
Can't believe. I get that you're attached to your pet and you miss it and stuff.
Listen,
but name your child after your pet and hide it from your partner. You got me effed up. That's all I.
But the thing is, it never got brought up. Like, how do you
Because it kept it from her, knowing full well she would not have gone with it. I truly believe, like these people in the comment section, you kept that from her because you knew damn well if you told her where the name came from, she would have said no. And that's what's sneaking. And that's why he felt bad, because he knew he was hella wrong, and he went on that column to go, am I the a-hole? And everybody say, yeah, you are.
To say he lied is a huge reach, though. To say he lied.
Tricked her. He tricked her. That's effed up. Like, that's what I'm saying.
Like, I named my hamster Mia, and I really love that name. I would totally name my child Mia.
Just say, where'd you get the name Mia? Oh, yeah, after my hamster that passed away years ago. Mom, are you serious right now? Like,
it's also based on the character from Rebelde. Thank you. You don't even know that show. Roll your eyes, bitch. Wait till I get to Maryland. When I see you, I'm gonna choke your ass.
You're part of the 1%. Because, like I said, I agree with the group. Everyone said he was an a-hole.
To me, it's not the same. If it was like a crazy name that you named it after like a dog or something like that, where it's like, oh, it's so unique, but it's weird. Like, ugh. No. But this is why you have conversations. I don't know. I think it's fine. And stop blaming only him. What is wrong with you? You agreed. It doesn't matter. You agreed. No backseat.
We're not going in circles with this. I'm not going in circles. He was dead wrong. I'm gonna end it and say I agree with the group. You are truly the a-hole.
You know what? Your opinion doesn't matter because you're very like hypocritical. Bougie. All right, guys. Just like Kate Capri, your opinion is invalid.
I ain't gotta make up lies though to get attention. So yeah. What?
Bougie. Anywho, that's the end of our episode, guys.
Yay! This is a good episode. You know, we was talking about bang, 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 and then we was talking about dogs who were lying about their cats.
Something like click, click, bang, bang. Ah. Sorry, dude. I'm on a roll. Like anybody says anything, immediately triggered by BTS. All their lyrics.
If I become a hypocrite and have a daughter, which I really truly don't believe this is gonna happen, and I decide, oh, I'm gonna name her Karma like my cat, I'm gonna be honest and tell my man. I'm not gonna hide that from him, like some people.
Ew, Karma?
So yeah. So are we ready for our artist of the week?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so our artist of the week is Pink Bands. And this is really cool because I met her at a showcase. She is super, super sweet. She is a sorority girl. She's from California. She's been making music for a hot minute. She's a rapper. And also she did bring her friend and sorority sister, who's an esthetician. I hope I pronounced it right. And that is a person that does, you know, spa treatment, face care. Yeah, and she does makeup.
In the neighborhood.
So if you need your eyelashes extended, you could go see her. But unfortunately, this is for people who live in California only. So if you live around her area, you can go to her and she'll hook your face up, you know, rightfully so. So we're gonna put the link to her IG.
Look at this. Yep. Well, right now I have the lighting, but you know.
Yep, her name's Carson, and it's I believe Beauty Bar, that's what it's called, or Beauty Bar with a Z instead of a T. But she was super nice when I met her also. So, you know, give Carson some money and help her out with her business and put it out there because she's great. So we really need to give her a clap. So Pink Band's song that we're playing is Deleste. And we're going to play the music video for her. I kind of like it. Well, not kind of. I like it because, you know, it kind of reminds me of California Love with Tupac because, you know,
the desert.
Yeah, she's in the desert and she's in the car and she dressed up. She got a helmet and she like, yay.
That's a bad bitch vibe. She a bad bitch. I just want to let that be known. You're a bad bitch. So I would do the same where it's like, bitch, you're not a bitch, but bitch, you a bad bitch. I just wanted to say that.
So, like, Kink Bands, you were super sweet. We can't wait to play. And your music, well, your music gonna play in a few seconds, but we just want to tell everybody, bye. Play that ish.
Ponte trucha, no seas puta, bañate sucia como Yari le gusta blusas. Eres basura, vamos a Cuba, ¿dónde está la mota? Salsa verde, salsa roja, muy picosa, siempre caprichosa, peligrosa, chacalosa, muy hermosa, trocas rosas, escandalosa, muy cabrona. No sentimientos, no mamona, la más perrona, me llama la chona, baila en la zona rosa. Amanecimos en San Francisco, California, con mis compas enemigas, uy, que me odian. Pistear hasta que tenemos una coma. Amiguis guapa y tetona, me compra ropa y pistolas, no paga en dinero, él paga en drogas. Esta es mi pinche rola, viejas amargadas, putas horas, solo modelos, no coronas, vestidos negros como palomas, me regalan mota, nunca rosas, porque salí tan chingona, oro directamente de Sinaloa. Como cambian las cosas, inteligente y muy diferente. Tú no sabes, tú no entiendes, tú ganas con el cotorro, yo gano con el valiente, demasiada caliente, manezca fresca como billete. Yo soy don como Chente, siempre está en el medio de mis cachetes. Tú tiras algo, tiro cohetes, más helada que la nieve. Viene por atrás, nunca por el frente, de Los Ángeles pero del este.